Hello my friends, I'm back. Where was I? Well, I was on a vacation. I don't really take vacations because the war doesn't take vacations. But to be able to do this long term, I finally forced myself to take a vacation. And I'll spend it with my girlfriend in Venice. If you want to see what I did on my vacation, then go to my Instagram, links in the description below. Everything is up there. Immediately as I left, Ukraine and Russia got busy. So much happened. Let's get right into it. The footage you see here, it seems very familiar with the drone attack on Moscow a few days ago, but it's not. This happened today morning, early morning. It's another Ukrainian drone attack on Moscow to the very same building, the very same skyscraper as a few days ago. This skyscraper holds the offices of Russian Ministry of Digital Development, Communications and Mass Media. The last attack on this building was on the 29th of July, and this morning, the 1st of August, another Ukrainian drone attack happened against this building. Russian Ministry of Defense claims that all of the drones were shot down, but on this footage we can see damage done to the building. You and I, we have the same question, and Putin also. What Moscow air defense doing? What is it doing? Where is it? Ukraine has taken responsibility of this attack, which destroyed the Russian government office of the 10th floor of this skyscraper. Do you notice something strange with this footage? A lot of people in the last time that we saw this footage pointed out that this is a backwards video. It's in reverse and the drone is flying actually backwards. But no, this is a weird Ukrainian drone. Nobody knows which one is it. But it has a shorter wingspan in the front and a longer wingspan in the back. And remember a few months ago when Ukraine performed their first major drone attack against Moscow, they used these very same drones on a mass scale. About 30 of them were flown to Moscow, hitting the richer areas of the city. And this is the very same drone used today morning. So we know it's Ukrainian. Here is another Ukrainian drone. This one is called the Beaver. It has a range of 1,000 kilometers or 620 miles. This is a scary drone for the Russians because 1,000 kilometers from the Ukrainian border or from the front line, it doesn't matter which one. As we can see, it can hit Moscow, it can hit very close to St. Petersburg, and in between Moscow and Ukraine there is plenty of target, plenty of airfields, plenty of ammunition depots, barracks, training areas, Rostov-on-Don, Krasnodar, Volgograd. Military facilities in all of these cities are now targets. The Ukrainian intelligence officially reported this. The only way to stop these attacks on Moscow is the immediate withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine. I have always reported in my videos that shooting down Russian Lancet drones is incredibly difficult, and they are one of the most effective Russian kamikaze drones produced. In this video we can actually see the air defense units of the 10th Separate Assault Mountain Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, whew, that's a mouthful, shoot down a Russian Lancet kamikaze drone. It looks great. So it is possible, but it's difficult. The video is great and all, but actually I want to guide your attention to one of the comments under the video, which says Ukraine needs lots of electronic warfare guns. This is, I think, what he means. They would be much cheaper in fight with drones than various air defense systems with missiles. And Ukraine might produce them themselves. I wonder, do they invest in it? This is a very great question, a very great topic. I want to comment on it that the video we saw right now, it doesn't use a missile. It probably uses an automated cannon, automated turret to shoot these down, which is actually the cheapest way. Electronic warfare guns are incredibly expensive, they don't have that great of a range, and half of the time they don't work. These are drone guns, for example. We might expect from computer games or from movies that you point it at a drone, you activate it and you bring the drone down. This is how it works in a perfect world. Well, half of the time in reality it doesn't work like that. What is the most effective and cheapest way to take down drones actually is here, the German Gepard. Ammunition is cheap, mass-producible, and the effectiveness and accuracy of this weapon has been proven to be incredible. It's one of the great myths that Ukraine needs more drone guns. No, they simply need more automated cannons or turrets, Gepard-like systems to shoot down these drones. The issue is that they don't have enough. Manufacturing bullets on a mass scale is a lot cheaper than manufacturing drone guns. If you don't agree with me on this, put it in the comments, I will read it. Now, my friends, let's go over the Russian losses of the past 24 hours. 1st of August 2023. 500 Russian liquidated personnel. This is the 7-day average. It is the 1-month average. It has been 400 to 500 for the past 30 days, with a very slight increase at some days. On most frontal areas, Russians are in a defensive mode, meaning they will lose less men and unfortunately cause more casualties for the attacking side, which is Ukraine. On some frontal areas, the Russians are still pushing. 5 tanks, 17 armored personnel vehicles. These come from the areas that the Russians are pushing with, because they don't use tanks anymore to push, because they don't have that many. They're using them for defensive purposes. They push with infantry fighting vehicles. BTRs, BMPs, PMDs and stuff like that. This is why we see 17 of them knocked out cold. 23 artillery systems, which shows that Ukraine is still on the hunt. Coupled with destroyed logistics, almost 2-month-long artillery systems hunt might bear fruit very soon. We'll go into the logistics after this. 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, 10 UAVs, 32 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 3 special equipment. My friends, now let's zoom into one of Russia's most important logistical chains of the Southern Army grouping, which is the Har Bridge. Right here, you can see it. This cluster of islands and cluster of water bodies here is which separates the Kherson Oblast from Crimean Oblast. The Oblast border is marked with red, and as you can see, actually there is no physical land connection in between of those two oblasts, except for where I am with my cursor right here, all of this area, and then the Har Bridge, which is right here. 2 landmasses only separated by this small, very small Har Strait. This is the railway bridge going over the Har Strait, and we now have definite proof that Ukraine struck it with Storm Shadow missile. 1 Storm Shadow missile that, of course, hit with perfect accuracy exactly where it was aimed at. And where was it aimed at? Of course, to take out the railway, because most of the Russian logistics works through rail and some of it works through truck logistics. Taking out the artillery systems which Ukraine has been doing for 2 months now, and now striking these vital railway lines, which are the arteries of the Russian Southern Army grouping, which is under pressure already from the fronts, because Ukrainian army is pushing from several directions. We're seeing a pattern here. Ukraine does everything they can to eliminate Russian artillery capabilities, taking out the artillery systems and taking out the logistics that transport munitions to the artillery systems. This is what Ukraine has to do to make up for the lack of F-16s. They cannot deploy most of their brigades equipped with Western tech because Russian artillery would just make very quick work out of them. After Russian artillery has been eliminated or suppressed enough, only then can Ukraine start pushing units into a very small frontal area to break through the Russian lines. On this photo we can see that the whole of Kherson Oblast and the Southern Army grouping of Russia works their logistics through 2 main railway lines that both cross Crimea. One is Kerch to Kherson railway line, this one right here. The other one is Sevastopol to Melitopol. Melitopol is the most important logistics hub of the Russian army in the southern occupied Ukraine. And this railway line has been severed right now. We don't know for how long, but a week is horrible, a month is disastrous for the Russian army. Of course, they can get their munitions from the Kherson line, but they have to transport the munitions from Kerch to one of the settlements in this area in the southern Kherson Oblast, reload them onto trucks and then use the roads to get them to Melitopol, and then reload them onto trains again to get them closer to the front lines. It's gonna take forever, and all of these reloading stations will be targets that we know as ammunition depots. Ukraine explodes them every day, every night. For example, if you want to get from Har to northern Crimea before crossing the bridge took you 20 minutes, now the same route takes you 3 hours and 24 minutes since the bridge is temporarily closed. Showing already the car logistics, which has gained hours to its journey. The train logistics gains an entire day, with offloading and unloading few days. Russian Ministry of Defense of course reported that this Har Bridge was attacked with 12 Storm Shadow missiles and that they were all shot down, and the damage was done only by the falling debris of the shot down Storm Shadow missiles. But this is incredible cope, because Russia has not been able to shoot down a single Storm Shadow throughout the entire usage of Storm Shadows, so only one was used and it hit. What is happening on the front lines? Well, the biggest change is, of course, in the Velika Novosilka axis, which is the liberation of the settlement of Staromayorsk. It was reported a few days ago, but now we have more information of what was the situation in the settlement when Ukrainian forces entered it. Ukrainian troops report that everything was mined, and I say everything. Not some areas, some paths or some bodies, everything. Russians had to leave behind some of their vehicles, some of their dead bodies, some of their weaponry, and Ukrainians report that the paths leading to the Russian vehicles or leading to Russian bodies were mined. The bodies and the vehicles themselves were mined. There were a lot of butterfly mines, small mines that do minor damage to infantry. And the major reasons why the offense takes so long is the extensive mining. Unfortunately, mines are very cheap and very mass producible, and they're one of the most effective Russian ways to stop the Ukrainian offense. Unfortunately, they work. Russian sources report that Urozhaine, the next door settlement of Staromayorsk right here, the situation is deteriorating for the Russian units and they probably will have to pull out in the near future, and we can be sure that they will mine the hell out of this settlement. When Ukraine is liberated, they cannot immediately storm on to Savitne, the next settlement right here. Another strong Ukrainian frontal push is happening north from Prutnya. They are pushing south, trying to throw a keel in between Urozhaine and Prutnya. I'm talking about these fields in between of those two settlements. Also, Russians have pulled out of Novomayorsk. It is in the gray zone here, as you can see, but Ukrainian forces have not yet advanced into the settlement due to heavy mining of the fields. I feel like I report that all the time, but that is the case. I cannot not report it. Novodonetsk, as you can see, is still under Russian occupation, but both of the sides of the settlement have been pushed back, so Russia has no option, of course, but to pull back from Novodonetsk, but not before they will mine the hell out of it. Very important news comes from Bakhmut. And actually, south of Bakhmut, the newest reports are that Klishivka, this settlement that has been contested for the last not 6 months, but a year almost. Russians right now are pulling out of this settlement or have pulled out already. But to illustrate the situation further, I will use another map. This is the topographical map around Klishivka. We've seen the mountain range right on the Ukrainian liberated side of Klishivka, meaning that Klishivka as a settlement is in the valley. Ukraine has filled these mountains with their artillery positions, shooting into the valley for the last 2 months. Not pushing into Klishivka for the very reason that shooting artillery from an elevated position into the valley is incredibly precise and effective. Why push into the settlement if you can allow the Russians to bring in more and more troops to just target them into the kill box? This is what Ukraine has been doing. Unfortunately, Russians have got up to it, I guess. It has taken them 2 months and thousands of losses. They have pulled back. This map doesn't show it yet. Ukraine has not advanced into the settlement because of incredibly extensive mining. Yes, you guessed it. For a brief moment, I will go back to the topic of bridges. The photo you see right here is another defensive layer for the Kerch Bridge. We all love the way Ukraine attacked it 2 weeks ago. It was beautiful to watch, and I was very surprised that they were still able to do it because Russia bragged of how well defended the bridge was. Well, now we actually see the anti-naval drone line here. Just on this photo, I have to unfortunately agree that this will be effective. Naval drones, the way Ukraine is using them, cannot pass through this line, and I'm surprised Russia hasn't used this before. This is no satellites, no dolphins, no divers, no even missiles. It's just a very cheap physical barrier on the bridge, and damn it, it probably works. Unless you blast a hole into it with one drone and then other ones will go through, this is an opportunity also. Recently an article came out that stated that Elon Musk personally has decided which Starlink capabilities can Ukraine use and which ones they can't. For example, Elon forbade the usage of Starlink for attacks against Russian-occupied Crimea for the military targets. That means Elon Musk personally has decided which targets he wants Ukraine to attack with his system. This is a big no-no. First of all, it's not OPSEC if Elon knows. Second of all, he should not have the say in this. And this is why Pentagon has purchased 500 Starlink systems for Ukraine with the condition that Elon has no say whether to turn the range off or on. Basically, the point of this purchase is to take away Elon's power to meddle in Ukrainian attacks, in Ukrainian usage of this system. Starlink for Ukraine is incredibly important. I cannot stress enough how important it is. Most of the drone attacks are done using Starlink. Most of the internet on the front line and connectivity is through Starlink. Magyar, you all know Magyar, the drone god. has stated that Russians have invented the ability to now jam Starlink at zero line. They have not started the mass producing of these jammers yet, but they have discovered the capability. Magyar has felt it on his birds, and he says that these Russian jammers will be much more dangerous than the lacking of F-16s for Ukraine. And if Russia will be able to produce them on any kind of scale, then Ukraine needs to make them high-value targets immediately and take them out as soon as they discover them, because Starlink needs to work for any kind of Ukrainian gains. Connecting to Starlink, let's now watch a very short clip about Ukrainian newest sea drone, Magura V5. And it relies on Starlink, illustrating how important it is. Ukrainian new weapons platforms, new sea drones need Starlink to connect to their targets.
Magura, it's because it's a maritime autonomous guard robotic apparatus, V-type, vessel type. It's a 5 model, so Magura V5. Product in Ukraine, it's a Ukrainian product. It's a good recommend in army right now. It could be different. It could be, yeah.
You can see the insane maneuverability of these drones. They need to be very agile.
Difference. It could be satellite. It could be local navigation. It could be autonomous navigation. It's a platform, so it has a different class. It's in Ukrainian forces using and get requests for new, and it's manufactured. Can use different kind of connections, as satellite, it mesh, it could be local, so it very covertly could be. It could use different engines, like electrical, hybrid, so it could be maximum silent and currently on the operations. It's length 5.5 meters and with width 1.5 meters, so it's enough to be small to be high currently, and it's enough to take as much capacity as needs to military purpose. As you know, Ukraine in war, and this is a bad situation for country, but it's a good situation for manufacturers of drone who can test in real combat use the items, because a lot of military stuff doesn't work in real war. So it could be developed decades of years and doesn't work in a real situation. All that produced in Ukraine, it must be used by military, and if it doesn't work, it not will be produced.
What is basically saying that war is the best way to test if your weapon system is effective or not, because the West has been producing weapons that have not been tested on a large-scale war yet, and they're very effective on testing grounds. They are already mass-produced because they were effective on testing grounds, but now you bring them to Ukraine and you see, oh, it has flaw this, flaw that, this has to be reprogrammed, this has to be redesigned. Nothing beats real experience. This is what Ukraine has right now. And finally, we will watch a video translated by Dmitry about our Ukrainian fast, mobile, small anti-tank crew. I've always liked this tactic because these are perfect for hit and runs. Tanks are slow, these are fast. And they are partially the reasons that Russians don't want to use tanks on their offensive operations right now, because they will simply lose them. Our unit is carrying out tasks in areas with tank danger and joints between battalions, in areas where help against tanks is needed. The unit always completes its tasks. Depending on the weather, the locality is suitable for them. We use anti-tank weapons such as Javelin and Stugna P. In recent times, we destroyed 6 enemy vehicles in this area. In total, we destroyed around 40 enemy vehicles. What? This one 3-man crew with one buggy is destroying 40 enemy vehicles? This is an insane ratio. My achievements include a BMP, lightly armored personnel cars and tanks. The maximum distance of strike in our unit is 5,600 meters using Stugna P. The minimum was 700 meters. 5.6 kilometers! That is a sniper shot for an anti-tank crew. Tank burns best if it's full of orcs and ammo. Turret to the moon. Or a BMP that is full of infantry on its way. They all scatter. We're motivated for Ukraine to be free and destroy as many enemies as possible. I gotta say, it looks very cool. My friends, I am glad to be back and I got some big things coming your way. In about a week I will launch another fundraiser for trucks. And I will deliver these trucks myself personally, and they will be for special forces of Ukrainian armed forces. I have met these units personally. And there will be another fundraiser. I will launch 2 in a row, and this will be a surprise for you. So keep an eye on my channel. And thank you for still being here. For a military blogger, very hard to take a vacation because the war doesn't stop. And it's incredibly scary because in the back of my mind is if I go away, people will just watch somebody else and I don't have an audience anymore. This is my fear. So if you're here, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And this is why I want to read you 5 Patreons who have been here the duration of my vacation. Patrick Koch, Howard Cohen, Jochen Karmodi, Rai Pretz, Kimmy Flick. Thank you to these people. If you like what I do, the Patreon link is in the description below. Also, my friends, check out my Twitter account for more compact information about the events happening in the Russia-Ukrainian war. 5 minutes of reading per day and you know everything, most important things. If you want to see what I did in Venice on my vacation or what I'm going to do in Ukraine in September, check out my Instagram, everything posted there. Until my next video, my friends, Slava Ukraini.